Hello there.
Hey, Dr. Lamb,
How are you?
I'm doing well. So you made it home okay?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm having problems. My internet dropped 3 times in my early class, and
Yeah, I knew
and
something was wrong. Do I need to record on this
I'm
end?
I'm gonna try.
I
I'm
don't know
gonna
if it's
try.
not gonna let. Okay,
So I don't know if it's recording. It says it's recording. I don't know if it's recording on mine or yours.
it is.
But
It's showing recording.
all right. So let's go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. Again, welcome to the town hall for the AAPTEL. We are recording this tonight. And so I will dive right in. I want to start out tonight with Dr. Stedman's helpful hints. I'll let him cover that one, and then we'll move on from there into the task and prompt. Then we'll look at the um, then we'll look at the template, and then we'll answer some questions. So, Dr. Stedman, if you'll lead us off tonight with your helpful hints.
Okay. Okay. And they should have gotten an email from me earlier today, and it was just a reminder of, where you go in Blackboard to begin your work with the AppTel. And if you look back at that, it would be very wise to make sure that you look at all those documents first, analyze them, and just see what's there for the AppTel. Again, the process is the same. The difference being with the app, so you had 5 tasks that you had to complete. With the AppTel, there's going to be 4 tasks, and that's what we're going to be um, going over at this time. If you will look at the beginning, and I'm not going to read all of this. I'm just going to point out some highlight. The begin the, to, to begin with, you're going to have another new title page, cover page, and the only thing that you do for the AppTel is to put your name here, and then you move on to task 1. And if you'll move down, Dr. Lamb, just going down to task 1, prompt 1. Your Again, your school profile will be the same unless there is a reason to edit it or to make any changes to it, but you'll use the same school profile for the AppTel that you used for the AppSell. And again, at the end of this process, you will uh, remove all of those school profiles, and you'll just have one, just like you put all of the AppSell together. That's what you'll do for the whole document at the very end of the process. But you're going to use that unless there's a need to change it for all of your evidences. Task 1, note you will provide a literature review for each of the 5 identified sections in task 1. Now remember, in the APSL, you're dealing with student learning. You've identified a problem, you've researched it, you know what the need is in your school, and you've established an action plan for the problem. In task or evidence 2, you're dealing with teacher leadership and empowerment. However, as you are working with researching teacher leadership, as you're um, researching teacher empowerment, observing teacher leadership in your school or lack of teacher empowerment or lack of, um, you should always keep in mind the work that you've done in evidence 1. This is a seamless process, and everything should tie together. You're beginning to look at your teachers who work with the students, because you want to identify the strengths, weaknesses in your school, so that you can hopefully establish some type of plan that's going to make things better at your school. So in the end, the overall um, objective is to improve student achievement. With good teachers, hopefully that can aid in the process that you established in task 1 or in evidence 1. Again, in task 1, it says you will provide a literature review for each of the 5 identified sections. There are 5 sections. Now, remember what we said at the beginning of this process with the AAPTEL, we said if it's in yellow, that means you got to write something. We've identified the heading. The heading is building efficacy and empowerment among staff. By the way, you've got a template for this as well. The AAPTEL template that Dr. Lamb will show you again that in just a few minutes, but a template, and you follow the template. With this, you're going to complete your literature review with a minimum of 3 references, APA. Your research should be building efficacy and empowerment among staff, thinking about what you've done in evidence 1 to improve overall student achievement in your school, but especially in that identified area that you have that you've identified. Number 2, your heading is results-oriented professional development. This is not, you're not just, what does the research say about results-oriented professional development? You should think about not just any type of professional development, but professional development that is going to lend itself to helping strengthen teachers and their leadership and empowerment in the school. But again, going back to that identified problem in evidence 1 that you're attacking. Number 3, your heading, recruitment, placement, and mentoring of school staff. Again, what does the research say? Not your opinion. What is research? And we need relevant research, recent research. So make sure that it's not something that's outdated, that it has relevancy to what we're doing. And number 5, your heading is teacher leadership and decision making. Again, what does the research have to say about teacher leadership and decision making in a 21st century school? Okay, Dr. Lamb, if you'll move on down. Now, each of these sections will have a minimum of 3 references for a total of 15 references in the literature review of those 5 areas that we've just talked about. Amongst those researchers that you should consider, now this is just a tip of the iceberg, but you should consider Todd Whitaker. You should consider Linda Darling Hammond and Robert Marzano, etc. Realizing that probably your strongest of all of those when it comes to the literature review is probably going to be Linda Darling Hammond. Wouldn't you say, Dr. Lamb?
Yeah, she's the staff development guru.
She is the guru in staff development. So, it would, I would just do research anything that you can find on Linda Darling Hammond and go from there. And that will lead you into other directions with other people that have contributed to the field of research as well. And again, make sure that you are following correct APA. So in task 1, the whole task 1 is dealing with research, researching best practices for teacher empowerment and teacher leadership. Okay, task 1, prompt 2. The candidate will create, and I want you to notice this, you're going to do 2 things. You're going to create a checklist and you're going to create a survey. The survey is going to be to determine teacher perception of their empowerment as leaders in your school. Now, this can be done in a variety of ways. You can do SurveyMonkey, surveys that you hand out to teachers in a teachers meeting. It can be done, there's just a variety of ways, but you're going to survey the teachers to determine, what do they think, you're gauging what they think, how they feel. Number 3, you can pull questions. Dr. Lamb, did you say something?
Yeah, okay. Let me.
You can go ahead.
All right. Please remember that there's 2 types of teacher empowerment, and you will have, when you do your research. Let me go back here. When you do your research, it's 1 in 5. Building efficacy and empowerment among staff. That's empowerment as a classroom leader. That's using best practices. That's Robert Marzano. Teacher leadership and decision maker is leadership as empowerment as a school leader And that's Todd Whitaker. Do you get to be involved in leading staff development? Do you get to be involved in the school improvement plan? Do you get to be involved in curriculum? Do you get to be involved in resources, budget? And the holy grail, number 5, do you get to be involved in personnel decisions? That's empowerment as a teacher school leader. Empowerment as a classroom leader. So that's just 2 types of empowerment here. And so your survey, you can survey for empowerment as a school leader. Do you get to do these things? And you say, well, what things are you talking about, Dale? Well, look at your template. These are the things that Todd Whitaker says show that you're empowered as a school leader from the classroom. You get input in professional development. You get a school improvement plan, curriculum, budget, and the hiring process for new teachers. Your survey should reflect that. It may not be Whitaker, you may find something else, but we're looking for not your empowerment in the classroom, but your empowerment outside of the classroom. What of these roles do you get to portray, or do teachers get to portray in their business building? And then when you do the checklist later on, you can use the checklist that your district has for walkthroughs, or you can use something like Robert Marzano. These 9 high yield strategies as a checklist going into the classroom. And it would look something like this. This is what your survey would look like, survey of best practices, and this is what your checklist. Did you see these things when you went in there? We're trying to gauge 2 things here, 2 things. Empowerment as a classroom leader and empowerment as a school leader. They are 2 completely separate things. With the notion here, and this is the kernel of truth that we want you to understand.
Dr. Lamb, they don't see it. They don't see a checklist. We don't see a checklist.
Let me go back and try to share again. Can you see it now?
Yes, now we can. Yes.
All right. So here's your survey. That's from Whitaker. Here's your checklist. That's from Marzano. But the kernel of truth here is this. You want your teachers to be great classroom leaders. That's what your professional development is all about, is making them better in their classroom. That's the key. And then your best teachers in the classroom, you want them to be leaders in your building, because it becomes a culture of teaching and learning. You don't want your teacher leaders outside on all doing these things here on your school improvement team, or doing staff development, or making curriculum, or hiring decisions. You don't want the process to get on those teams to be eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or whoever's been there the longest. You want your best teachers. You want to reward great teaching. And if you reward great teaching in your building, that becomes the coin of the realm. That becomes what you trade on. This building is about teaching and learning. It's about performance, about student achievement. This is the way you get that culture change, is that you teach teachers to be great teachers in the classroom, and you reward them with school leadership positions. And that tells everybody teaching and learning is what matters here. This is the heart. This is the heart of building the culture of teaching and learning in your building. You have to teach teachers how to teach, and then you have to reward them with positions of authority and leadership in your building, if teaching and learning matters to you. And if you remember, I told you first night, teaching and learning doesn't matter. If you're one of those people that don't believe about report cards and keeping scores and testing, you're in the wrong business. That's how you will be evaluated. That is the coin. That's how our business works. It's all about student achievement. People say, well, how you get that student achievement? This is how. This is the guts of the how here. This is down in the weeds, whatever metaphor you want to use. This is how you get student achievement, is you train teachers to be great and empowered in their classes. You empower them as leaders in the building, creates a culture of teaching and learning, and the momentum gets on your side in your building. That's the notion here. So that's what we're looking at here. What we're looking for you now. Again, you don't have to use Todd Whitaker's this survey here. This is the seminal work. He's the first person who came up with this in terms of empowerment as a school-wide leader. And then you don't have to use Marzano's 9 as the checklist. If your district has a checklist for walkthroughs, then you would use it. But these are the classic examples of the two types of empowerment, of teacher empowerment. One is a school leader, one is a classroom leader. And they are separate things. One leads to the other. Back to Dr. Stedman.
Okay. And there's some questions, Dr. Lamb, but we may want to just wait and answer those after.
Well, I can.
We
let
get,
me see. Let me go back to the chat.
Go ahead. See if they're
all documents that we
now.
show you are always on Blackboard. The checklist, I did this.
Those are on
template. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So we're good. Everything we show you is in Blackboard.
And we're gonna go to that before we leave and show them where it is too.
Well, it's under.
Okay.
It's right here. Let me go back.
AAPTEL template and materials. Everything is there.
Okay, the task and prompts are here and the scoring rubric is there, and then template. I'm on the wrong one. I'm sorry. AAPTEL.
Come on down. There it is.
There they are. There's your template that I was just going over, and there's what Dr. Stedman's covering. Everything we always cover is already here. And
Marzano's 9, everything is on there.
Everything is already
just
here.
showed them.
Marzano is here. Here's Marzano's 9 high yield strategies. It's all here, right here. And it tells you how much gain even you'll get from using these. It tells you what they are and what it looks like in the classroom, so that you'll know when you go and do a walkthrough, you'll know what you're looking for. It's all here. It's all right here in your. It's all right here in your shell. If you say, well, I don't know what I'm looking for. I've got this list of 9 high yield strategies from Marzano. How do I know if they're using them or not? Well, right here, just click on this and it'll tell you. It'll tell you how it looks in the classroom, what you'll be looking for over here in the right-hand column. These are the things that you look for over here in the right-hand column, and you'll know if they're using the high yield strategy, that one or not. It's all here.
And Dr. Lamb, I want on the look, the second column, what the research says, according to Mozart, this is what he said. All this is research evidence based. So
this is the seminal work from 2001. If you can find some more recent stuff, that's great. But we always include the seminal work, and that, as always, anything that's research-based, you understand, you start with the most important work. And then, now there's newer and probably better stuff that has evolved over the years. But this is the seminal work and best practices. Everything goes back to this. This is the genesis. This is the start. This is chapter 1. This is where best practices started, right here. This is where best practices start. And so now, if your district uses somebody else or somebody more modern or whatever, that's fine. But you always recognize and pay a homage to the people that these kinds of things started with. And that's what we're telling you. The guru in best practices is Robert Marzano. The guru in empowerment as a school leader is Todd Whitaker. The guru in staff development models is Linda Darling Hammond. There have been people since. A lot of people that more modern that people like, but those are the 3 biggies in the area of this one. That they have books. They are revered in our industry. There's newer and more modern and popular people, but these are the founders of these areas. These are the people whose work was groundbreaking.
And at a minimum, we should, yeah, and at a minimum, we should see those three referenced in your lit review that you're doing in task 1.
Yeah.
So,
this is from the book Classroom Instruction That Works, Research-Based Strategies for Increasing Student Achievement by Robert Marzano, 2001. This was groundbreaking when it came out. Real research-based strategies that help you with increased student achievement, not just things that we thought that worked or things that we'd always done. This was the first time that real research-based evidence came out of this works and this doesn't. Now, a lot of people didn't like it because it gored their ox. Oh, I've been doing this forever. Yeah, but it doesn't work. You just did it because you always did it. And he said, this is the things that work. A lot of that stuff that y'all been doing, no value, harmful. If you want kids to learn, this is what you have to do. And a lot of people didn't like it because they weren't doing those things and didn't want to do those things. But we know better. We know that this is the way to go. So back to Dr. Stedman again. I've got to move that out of the way. We're back here again.
Okay, going down to prompt 2. Okay, again, 2 things: a checklist and a survey. And Dr. Lamb, go to number 3. You can pull questions from the Teacher Working Conditions Survey in North Carolina, Advanced Ed in North Carolina and South Carolina, and South Carolina Elliott, which is, I think, their evaluation system. All of those are embedded with questions that you can pull as you are creating, and because they're used in these capacities, they're already research-based, evidence-based. They can be used. They're valid to gather the data that you need.
Mm-hmm.
The example provided in the AAPTEL template for this survey, again, as Dr. Lamb said, is from Todd Whitaker's Best Practices for Teacher Empowerment and Leadership. Remember that this includes those areas that's outside the classroom environment. This is not inside the classroom. Again, you're going to create the survey in task 1, but you're going to actually use it in task 2. You're going to create something in task 1. You're going to actually use it in task 2. Go back up a little bit, Dr. Lamb. You scroll down too far. Okay, the checklist will be to determine teacher leadership in the classroom. This can be in the form of formal observations, walkthroughs, 15-minute minimum, instructional rounds, etc. The purpose is to create or use an instrument that will allow the observer, the administrator, to assess current best practices in the school or the clinical setting. The example in the AAPTEL template includes a checklist for empowerment, as Dr. Lamb has said, as a classroom leader research from Robert Marzano and his Marzano's 9. And then coming on down, there should be a walkthrough. Many of you, there's already walkthrough instruments in your districts. If you're, again, as Dr. Lamb said, if your district has an adopted walkthrough instrument, then by all means, I would use that. Please be reminded that the instrument that you use, though, must be research-based and not candidate-made due to validity and reliability concerns. So it's not something that you can just say, well, I'm going to put this together and make something up. It must be a research-based instrument that you find in the research or that your district is using. Again, you will actually use this instrument, whether it is one already used by your district or one that you find in another source, to conduct the actual walkthroughs for task 2. We're asking that you do at least 3 to 5 with your principal's approval. We do highly recommend that if you can, that you conduct these walkthroughs with your administrative team if you can. If not, then you need to get permission to do the walkthroughs, and we do highly encourage that you ask your administration to let teachers know ahead of time that you will be coming into their classrooms and why you are going to be visiting their classrooms.
All right, let me go through a
Okay.
couple points here and let Dr. Stedman catch his breath. You cannot, and let me be perfectly clear here. You cannot survey for best classroom practices. Let me say it again. You cannot survey for best classroom practices. This is a qualitative data assignment. You have to do it through observation and a checklist. If you survey teachers to ask them if they use best practices in their classroom, they'll all tell you yes. That's an IQ test. What teacher is going to tell you on a survey, I don't use best practices in my classroom? You cannot survey. You survey for empowerment outside of the classroom. Do you get to be on the school improvement team? Do you get to be on the budget committee? Those kinds of things. Those are yes/no kinds of
practices. Yeah.
But
yeah,
qualitative means interview or observation. It does not mean survey. Survey is quantitative. This is the qualitative piece. You've got a quantitative piece, qualitative piece. Y'all all have master's degrees. You had a research course. You know the difference between quantitative that comes from a validated measure, survey. You understand qualitative, which is interview observation. So I shouldn't have to explain to you. You cannot use a survey for qualitative data gathering. You have to use a walkthrough instrument and observe. So that's number one. Number two, has to be a validated instrument. For reliability and validity issues, you know what that means. Validity is, does it measure this, what it's supposed to, and reliable is, does it work the same way for everybody? Y'all know that. Now, and here's the next piece of this. We're not telling you that 2 or 3 walkthroughs that you can base an entire school's professional development plan off 2 or 3 walkthroughs. We want you to do those for the experience. You then ask your administration to estimate, either from looking at walkthroughs or data they've already collected, how many of your teachers use best practices and which ones do they not do well. That will factor into your professional growth plan. I'm not telling you that you can do 2 walkthroughs and know what everybody in your building needs, but your administration does, because they do walkthroughs on everybody. Everybody knows what a walkthrough is. That's 15 minutes or less that an administrator comes in your room, not a formal observation, it's a walkthrough, and they do a checklist of the practices that they see in your room during that 15 minutes. That's what we're talking about here. We know that you're not allowed to do formal observations legally and that you haven't been trained, but you can do walkthroughs because they're informal. Let me say that again. You are allowed legally to do walkthroughs because they're informal. Will you go in and see if you can take that checklist? Can I observe these things that I see? What am I looking for? Well, I go back and look, I've got them on this list. I can look at these definitions of best practices. I can figure out whether I see this stuff or not. You do that for the experience, and then you talk to your administration and you get the data from them. How many of our teachers, what percentage use all 9? Which ones aren't being used very much? What do we really need to work on? That's where you go from there. But once you go in the classroom and see this stuff and use that checklist, it becomes a lot clearer what your staff development plan has to be. Okay, let me see what this question is. Survey in Google Forms, okay. Survey for empowerment as a school leader is fine in Google Forms. So Rhonda had a walkthrough today. Very good, Rhonda. Thank you for that. Yeah, see, they happen all the time. See, they're informal, so you could do that. And you could even ask your colleagues, can I come in your room and do one on you? Because they're informal. We're not trying, I will make it clear. We're not asking you to go in and say, I've got to go do a teacher evaluation. That is not what we're telling you. You're doing informal walkthroughs. I don't want any irate principals calling me up and wanting to fight. Make sure you understand what you're doing. The difference between an observation and a walkthrough. All right, back to Dr. Stedman.
This is more this, and again, the walkthrough is more of an experience for you as you're going into administration than anything else. It's an experience. Okay. Task 2. Prompt 1. The candidate will use the instruments from task 1 to actually collect data in task 2. Using the survey from task 1, the candidate's going to analyze the results for teacher perception of empowerment and leadership in the school. Dr. Lamb already said that. In addition, the candidate's going to collect data in the school over a period, we're asking 5 routine days. And over these 5 routine days, we're asking you again, you're going to assess by observing practices in the school. What do you see? Again, this goes back to that qualitative data that research that he's talking about. What do you see? You're encouraged to conduct informal interviews with teachers as well. That's a part of the qualitative process. Once you have collected your surveys and analyzed results, and you've completed the 5 days of observable practices in the school, you're to respond to these results narratively by addressing the 5 items in prompt 1. Now, I want you to notice, these are the same 5 items that you've researched. Now, the first time, I want you to think about it. The first time, it's not what you think, it's what does the research say. Now, this time, you've actually spent time doing walkthroughs, you've spent time interviewing, talking to people, you've got things that you can look at. This is kind of, the research says this, but this is what actually you found out in your school. So again, the heading is building efficacy and empowerment among staff. The same heading you used before when you research it. But this time, you are going to narratively respond to the survey results based on your 5 days of intense observations, interviews, everything that you've done. What is actually happening in your school based on building efficacy and empowerment among staff? And the same thing, what is actually happening with results-oriented professional development? You've looked at what's happening in your school. You've talked to people. The research says this, but this is what's happening in my school. And the same thing with recruitment, placement, and mentoring school staff, approaches to and for evaluation of school staff, and then teacher leadership and decision making. Come on down, Dr. Lambos. This puts it in as simply as I can say it. In task 1, you're researching the best practices for teacher empowerment and leadership in the school. And in task 2, you're taking these same 5 areas and you're analyzing the gaps between, this is what the research says in task 1, but this is was actually observed, and this is what is actually happening in my school for task 2. Prompt number, gaps in these 5 areas are to be addressed in narrative form using APA format and referencing sources identified in the literature as applicable. Again, you're researching task 1. Task 2, you're observing, you're gathering information based on your school, and you're looking at what is the gap. This is what the research says should be happening, but this is actually what is happening in my school. Anything, Dr. Lamb, at this point?
Okay. In task 1, you're figuring out what ought to be, and in task 2, you're figuring out what is. And the gap is the difference between what ought to be and what is. And that's where, and that margin, that becomes your professional growth plan.
Right.
That's to try to get you from where you are over to where you ought to be. So the first thing you learned is, this is where we ought to be. This is what we ought to be doing. This is what we are doing. How do we get over there? And that's why I said, you won't figure out what you are doing by simply doing 2 or 3 walkthroughs. Right. You get data from your principal about their walkthrough data to figure out, this is what we really are doing. And that survey tells you what opportunity teachers have for real empowerment outside. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you that you're also going to find out. That's a big secret about our business, not so secret. Schools in which the best teachers have leadership positions will have more best teachers. Let me say that again. Schools in which the best classroom teachers fill all of those leadership positions in terms of school empowered leadership positions, curriculum, staff development, hiring team, budget, school improvement team. If schools where the best teachers in the building sit on those committees and fulfill those leadership roles, have more best teachers. That's kind of the way it works. Schools in which it's eeny, meeny, miny, mo, it's just random as to who teacher leaders are. It's random in terms of the quality of teachers in the rooms as well. There's big variation between teachers because obviously great teaching is not prized. If the teacher that just rolls the ball out, metaphorically, is on the school leadership team, then we don't really care about great teaching. So why should I put myself out? I don't get any more if I'm a great teacher or if I'm not. But we're trying to create a culture where the corner of the realm is great great teaching. That's what we're there for. We create a culture of teaching and learning. That's the whole notion here. That's what we're trying to do. And to do that, we assess where we ought to be, where we are. We find the gap in between, and we put a plan in place to close that gap so that we get closer to where we ought to be.
Okay, in task 2, prompt 2, now remember in task 2, prompt 1, you've done a lot of writing. But in task 2, you're going to take that writing that you've done in prompt 1, and you're going to graphically, you're going to present the results of everything graphically. Walkthrough data is to be graphically and narratively explained in prompt 2. Now this is where Dr. Lamb was talking about getting information from your principal, interviewing your principal. This is where you would include the narrative results and anything graphically that you could provide with what your administrator shares with you about walkthroughs and that information. This is where you would provide that information in prompt 2. If your principal does not call the process walkthroughs, then you address whatever it is that they do. Different schools do different things. Again, instructional rounds may be what they do. Some schools do that, but whatever it is that they do, they have to do visits into classrooms. They have to do informal visits. So whatever it is, then that's what you would include in your work. Number 2, data is graphically presented in prompt 2. The candidate will actually show the results of the survey and other data collected during 5 days of observation in the forms of charts, tables, graphs, etc. Anything that you gathered can be put in graphic form, and again, your narrative work would be, make sure that we understand what we're looking at and why you're putting what you're putting there. Make sure that you use correct APA and identify everything as figures there. And number 3, the candidate will also provide graphic and narrative data for their personal walkthrough experiences. The 2 to 3 that you do, we'd like for you to talk about that experience as well there. And that's it for task 2. Now you've done all of that. Everything that you've done in task 1 and task 2 is so that you can do task 3. Again, Dr. Lamb told you at the very beginning of this program that everything that you do is going to have a plan of action in place. We want to make a difference in every area, every evidence that you complete. We want you to help your school grow in that area. So the candidate's going to lead their team, their selected PLC team, to develop a teacher empowerment leadership growth plan. Dr. Lamb has already mentioned that. The growth plan is to be, once you develop that, the growth plan is to be presented to school administration and to the school improvement team at the principal's discretion. Again, you need to ask permission for this team to be present. The presentation must include, but is not limited to, the following. You're going to do a report of best practices. You've researched that. What does the research say? a visual checklist. You've done that in task 2. The gap analysis was done in task 2. And then you're going to develop the growth plan in task 3. So this is this is a minimum of what needs to be in your presentation that you're going to present to your administration and hopefully to your school improvement team. It's highly recommended having the presentation recorded. This can also serve as a valuable artifact as you're building your competency folio. It's encouraged that you provide a narrative as well concerning the presentation experience. I would probably consider doing a PowerPoint presentation as well, or some type of you know virtual presentation with my administration and with the team. So down, Dr. Lamb, there are 10 areas identified for the growth plan as seen in the prompt. The candidate is to provide an analytical narrative for each of those 10 areas. And those 10 areas are outlined here. And again, you see them in yellow, so that means that you must write something. Your heading is going to be a vision for positive school environment. You know, based on everything that you've done in task 1 and task 2. Again, looking at based on the research, what I've seen and everything, putting it all together, the team and you are going to decide what is the vision for establishing positive school environment as you're putting this plan in place. Number 2, documentation to support this the identified needs. A list of strategic indicators of success. How do you know that once you put all this in place, how do you know that it's working? You need to build strategic indicators along the way, build successful indicators along the way. You're going to, some of the things you can do short term, some it's going to take a little bit longer. What are those short term goals and objectives? What are those long term goals and objectives as you're moving towards making improvements in these areas? What are the activities that's going to address these identified goals and activities? What are you going to put in place to make all of this happen? When is it going to happen? When are you going to start things? When are you going to finish things? A timeline of the activities. Then a plan for stakeholder involvement and buy-in. Everybody that's involved in this process, you know, what is the plan for involving everybody that should be a part of this process? The specific roles and responsibility. Who's going to do what and what are they going to do? That's what this is. Who's going to do what? People. And what are they going to do? The specific roles. And then finally, formative and summative assessment criteria. Remember, formative is that you look at the people and that's involved and the people that's working this process. How do you know that it's being done with fidelity? How do you know you don't just put a plan in place and then just say, okay, have at it? What is the monitoring process? What are the checkpoints along the way? How do you know that the people are doing what they're supposed to do? And then the summative assessment, you know that you can build them along the way, but at the end of the process, how are you going to determine whether it has worked or not, or whether you need to go back to the drawing board and you need to revisit some of the areas? What system is in place? Dr. Lamb, any comments about these?
Nope. Just make sure you use the graphic organizer you used for the same one that you use for the AAPTEL. This one right here.
Right.
There it is.
And again, remember, and again, and this goes back to the AAPTEL. Remember, we said that the PERT chart was optional, but this is not optional. You must do this, and this will be consistently used throughout all the evidence work that you do.
Because you're going to have to put all these together in the end when you get to the SOP, the 6 of these in your last semester. You're going to have to present a working document of your school improvement plan in SOP task 5. task 5 of the SOP. There's 6 tasks of it. You're going to have to present a working document. If you've done this every semester, all you got, it's there. You've got it. It's each of these action plans put together. It is a desk working copy that can be printed out and put on your bulletin board or on your desk plotter of what we're going to do, where, when. It is the action plan of our school improvement plan, the school improvement plan. And you have to develop one of these. And so if you do it now, you'll be so much further down the road in the end. It also helps you understand what the whole process is about.
Right.
All right. So now.
And so we're finally at task 4. Task 4 is simply the remaining 9 of the 21 competencies that was not addressed in the AAPTEL. And you, again, it's a reflection on your experience and the development of the AAPTEL for these 9, or either in your clinical experience, for these 9 evidences. And then you're going to put it all together just like you did with the AAPTEL. The process does not change when it comes to that. Now, there's a lot of work that's got to be done over the next few weeks, but you've got next week is fall break, so we will not be coming online with you next week. So this is it doesn't mean that you have time to not do anything. You must, I highly encourage you, do not stop working. This is all by design. We're giving you a little bit of time by design. And Dr. Lamb told you at the beginning of this program that we give you a lot of attention with the AAPTEL. We still give you attention with the AAPTEL, but we do start backing off a little bit. We're there to support you, but you've got to start doing some things on your own. So we're going to see, we've told you everything that you need to do to be successful with this. So we will back off just a little bit, just to see what you can do. And based on what you've done with the AAPTEL, there should be no problems with that experience. Next week, this is week 8. Next week is week 9. That is fall break. Week 10, we come back on that Tuesday and on that Thursday. On that Tuesday, we will reintroduce task 1 of the AAPTEL, which hopefully you will have done a lot with it already and moving on, because at the end of that week, the draft of task 1 is due, and you will begin task 2 the next week, and we are giving you 2 weeks for task 2. The draft will not be due until week 12, simply because of the 5 days of observation that you must do, the walkthroughs that you've got to do, the intensity of the demands of task 2. So there's a lot of work that's got to be done. So I am encouraging you, do not put it on the back burner. Do not say, well, I can get it. Time is very, very important in making sure that you keep up with these tasks and in using the time wisely that you have over the next 2 or 3 weeks to get this work done. Your instructors and Dr. Lamb, we will continue to look at work that's being submitted into Blackboard. We will check our email. If you have questions, we will look at things. If you're working on something and you need me, you know how to call me if I'm your instructor or if I'm your coach. You know how to get in touch with me. I will help you over this period of time, and your instructors will too, and Dr. Lamb will as well. We'll be at work, and we're around if you need us. Dr. Lamb, that's pretty much it.
All right, I've got a couple questions here. Dr. Stedman can point you to these. Is there a recording on uploading information to TaskStream? Yes. I did a town hall on TaskStream. Dr. Stedman will have to remember it was on Thursday, the second or third Thursday of the semester. I did one. He can point that to you.
I'll put it in an email to them, but it's actually listed, whatever week that was, is that recording is under that week.
Yes.
And it was early in the semester. It's going to be probably week 2 or week 3.
It was either the second or the third. I think it was the third Thursday. I did a task stream, how to upload the task stream. And yes, you're working on your folio now as well. And artifacts go in the folio, evidences, these narratives go in the DRF portfolio. All of that. When will we get the go ahead after submitting to turn it in? As soon as your instructor gets to it, normally the same day. They'll email you, you'll get a notice back in Blackboard to go ahead and submit it once it goes to turn it in. It doesn't take but a minute. They'll check it and get right back to you.
And if for some reason, Dr. Lamb, they need to communicate with the instructor to make sure that emails have not embedded and stacked or something, and that they haven't seen something.
Yeah. So if you, at 24 hours, if you hadn't heard from your instructor, if you've gone to turn it in, just email them right quick. Yeah. And I'm sure that it's there somewhere. Go to my grades and that response will come back to you. But they've got to check it before it goes. Remember, it can only be checked one time. Got to be checked. Once it goes to task stream, there's a problem. There's a problem. We want to catch those problems before we go to task stream.
But it shouldn't go to turn it in without the instructor telling them it's ready to go to turn it in.
Right. But once it's there, it doesn't take but a minute. Now, feedback from evaluators.
Okay.
Let me go over this, and this is the last thing for me tonight. I see our time's about up.
Yeah.
All right, feedback from evaluators. Some of you did what I asked you not to do. You looked at the example in the AAPTEL template, and you included 2 technologies in your 12 competencies that you covered for the AAPTEL. So that meant you only did 11. So that means you got to do 10 rather than 9. You do the 9 that you didn't do for the AAPTEL, you do in the AAPTEL. See these 21 competencies? You were to write 12 of these in task 5 of the AAPTEL. You're to do the other 9 in task 4 of the AAPTEL. If you didn't follow my directions and did 2 technologies the first time around, you're 1 short. You better have 10 this time out. Your evaluator let it slide on the AAPTEL. They will not. They will knock it down and send it back on the AAPTEL. If you only did, and they know, you get the same evaluator. They know who only turned in 11 the first time rather than 12. So I'm telling you now, if you were one of the people who did 2 technologies because you followed the example rather than the directions, then you better have 10 this time. Go back and look and see which one you missed. They've already given me that warning. So let me pull that quickly to show you what I'm talking about. And the AAPTEL, let me go to my documents.
Dr. Lamb, while you're looking that up, I just want to let them know that Thursday, tomorrow night, for any student who has not completed the AAPTEL, I will be online from 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock to assist as needed with any of them. The same link that we've been doing, that reoccurring link that they've got in Blackboard, is the link that they can use for tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. I'll be coming online, and any instructor that would like to join me at that time as well.
So when we gave you the examples of how to write your competencies in the AAPTEL, I intentionally included 2 technologies because they go different ways. Some of you, when you turned in your final evidence narrative for the AAPTEL that went to task stream, the evaluators caught that you did 2 technologies and was 1 short. If you did that and you know who you are, then you need to make sure that you have 10. Figure out the one that you got to have 10 for the AAPTEL instead of 9. If you doubled up on technology, it only counts 1 time. That means you left one out. So go back and catch that one if you did that when you turned your AAPTEL in. All right, that's it for me.
Dr. Lamb, they asked a question. I'm not going to address the AAPTEL tomorrow night. I'm only working with the AAPTEL. So tomorrow night is not for the AAPTEL. So we're not going to, I'm working specifically with those students that have not finished and have some issues that need some attention. So tomorrow night is for the AAPTEL only. Not tomorrow, I mean Thursday. Thanks, Brenda. Not tomorrow, but Thursday.
All right. Now, I'm traveling. I'm doing a program in Wilkes County Thursday night. It goes from 4 to 6. We're meeting at their central office with our collaborative partners. So I don't expect to be home before about 8 o'clock at the earliest. And so do we have anybody else, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Crawford, who could come online Thursday night for an AAPTEL session if needed?
I'm going to be there.
All right. So Dr. Hamilton will work with you on the AAPTEL Thursday night.
Okay.
Dr. Stedman's going to work on the AAPTEL. Again, I'm on the road. I'm out recruiting, doing a program in Wilkes County for both the master's and the doctoral programs. And so I'm not available. I hope to be home by 8, probably be 9 before I get home. It'll be too late for me. But if they can come on and do that with you, and it'll be better than me, because they won't preach so much as I do. So
Well, I'll work something out, and we'll get communication out to them. I'll work with Dr. Hamilton tomorrow, because it'll need to be 2 different links for whatever we'll get the communication out to them.
yeah. So we'll do 2 sessions on Thursday night, 1 for each, for those of you who need more support on that. Chelsea, Dr. Stedman tomorrow will get out 2 links, one, and you can go to either one of them or both for you. He'll get those links out to you tomorrow for Thursday night session. He'll have those for you. All right.
And Dr. Lamb, as a reminder, when we come back after fall break on that Thursday session, I'm going to ask Dr. Lamb, before we even go into the AAPTEL, we will go back over some of the requirements for task stream with your competency folio. We'll revisit that before we even get into the AAPTEL.
All righty. Okay, if there's nothing else tonight, thank you all for joining us tonight. They'll see you again on Thursday night, and I'll see you next or week after next. So everybody have a good break. Continue your work. Everybody have a good evening. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.